What is going on, guys? Travis Patel here. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. I know it's been a little bit since I've been doing consistent content and reaching out to you guys, but you know, life happens and shit. So today I want to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes I've made in my business, certain things that I'm still trying to recover from, still paying for, and the mistakes that I want you guys to avoid as much as possible. I'm sure all of you guys have your own mistakes that you've committed, but these are the 3 biggest things that have slowed down my growth, maybe had me, double back and have to fix problems, and some of them have caused me to hit kind of a low. I mean, over really the past year and a half, 2 years, I've been in a little bit of a rut as far as my mind and like my consistency and what I've been producing, and a lot of that comes down to the mistakes I made and then allowing myself to get down in the dumps and feel sorry for myself, or not have that strong mental attitude that I need to really get rocking. So let's go and talk about these 3 big mistakes that I want you guys to avoid. Now, number 1, or I guess we'll say number 3 on the list, is that I paid myself too much too early. And even more importantly, I didn't spend that money I paid myself on things that are going to work out over the long term. So my business grew extremely fast, extremely quick, and extremely big in a very short amount of time, because in the early days, the first couple years of me doing this, I made nothing personally. I put all the money we made back into the business, into the employees, into the systems, the advertisements, scaling, and all that. In the first couple years with my employees, every single employee in my business made more money than me. I literally only took home about $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and that was the minimum of all the money that I needed in a day-to-day or in the month-to-month. It was rent, it was food. I was a single man without a little guy like this, and didn't need much money to really survive and make it okay. So I took all the other money that my business made, even though we were making $50,000 to $100,000 plus a month, and I put it back into the business. And I used to tell my employees in the first couple early years, every single one of you guys makes more money than me, so just keep that in mind. And then it was one time, one Christmas, I was just like, okay, I'm going to start spending a little bit more on myself. I want to take a little bit more home. And I made a giant leap from taking $1,500 a month to like $15,000 to $20,000 a month. And that's not, not a super bad thing. If you're making the money, pay yourself. But it did not go back into the business. And then when things kind of hit the fan and things went wrong, or we had any problems and stuff like that, all of a sudden all that extra money that could be used to fix the problem was going on stupid vanity things that I was buying. Nice clothes, new watches, had pretty much the most expensive, nicest place that you can find in Nashville as far as condos go. So as far as, living, that was awesome. I loved that type of life. But when things went wrong and the business needed something, or our growth wasn't there, it was because I was paying myself too much, when really you need to, as a business owner, as a leader, you need to understand what you actually deserve and what your business deserves if you wanted to have that growth. If I would have kept on that role of paying myself a bare minimum, or just a little bit more than the comfort level, putting the rest of the money into my business, then growth would have continued on that rise. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made early on, was I just paid myself a little too much. Even though the money was there, some things happened. Some things kind of hit the fan. Some problems arose and we had some issues. And then all of a sudden, all that extra money in the business wasn't there. And we had to kind of work around and figure out the systems. Now, if I'm paying myself too much, then another kind of part of that mistake was I was only buying little vanity things. I wasn't buying real estate. I wasn't investing in more to kind of grow that business and grow beyond the business, growing different income streams and different things like that to be able to have a good long-term play. And that kind of brings me to my second biggest mistake, of my business is that I played a lot of short game there. We had a lot of times where the choices, the decisions, the actions, the things we sold, and things like that were to make money for this month. Because what happened when I started paying myself too much is that, again, when things would hit the fan or we'd have some mistakes, we had something go on, we had a gigantic employee bill. I had a lot of employees at this time where our monthly cost, our monthly expenses was really high up there. So if something went wrong, we didn't have a good month, a good revenue month or something like that, I still had to pay those people. I still had to pay all the expenses. So I had to find ways to make money in a quick amount of time. And, even though it's a blessing to be able to make $20,000, $30,000 in a weekend by doing one short little thing, it's also a little bit of a curse because I knew I had that ability. So a lot of times I would piggyback and bank myself off of, okay, well, we got to, make $20,000 this weekend to be able to pay payroll. But that is such a short-term play. All of those decisions, all of those choices were short-term. We weren't thinking long-term. A lot of times it's going to be very beneficial to you and your business and your life to take the loss this week and play the long-term. Think a year ahead, 2 years ahead, 6 months, something more long-term than just right now. So a lot of the decisions, the offers, the promotions, the things that we did in a rough period were short term because I needed the fix now. I just needed to make it till next week. And as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of us have this same type of mentality where we think, okay, we can always make it up. I have this skill set. Something goes wrong, we make money now, we can always make it up, we can always pay it back, we can always do this over time. But what happens if you start making too many short-term decisions back to back to back is that payback, that catching up piles up, and you all of a sudden find yourself in a very, very bad position that can really hurt your mentality and really hurt your momentum and your growth because now all of a sudden your entire month is working, or your entire even 6 months is working towards catching up to the hole that you've dug yourself into. So I really want you guys to think long term. I know it's hard to do because you need bills paid now. You need things done right now. You want to be comfortable now. But let me tell you right now that in the long run, it makes it so much easier and so much better if you play that long game. If you make those decisions that are going to pay out years to come instead of just weeks to come. And those kind of play in together. Point 3 and point 2 there, the two biggest mistakes, is that I paid myself too much, spent on the wrong things. We weren't thinking long-term. We were thinking short-term. We were thinking my own personal needs instead of the business and the growth and really the leadership that you should be bringing to the game. Now, my number one biggest mistake in business, and I want to warn all of you guys so much about this because I think a lot of us as self-employed entrepreneurs who are just starting from absolutely nothing, you probably have a shit job at first and you're moonlighting, trying to get something to go, and you don't really follow things completely as far as the way you're supposed to set things up. My number one biggest mistake was how I handled my taxes early on. Now, I'm coming from where I was self-employed, working, jobless, living on my sister's and my mom and dad's couch for a long time as I learned the ropes. And during this time, I made literally no money. So I never did taxes for years because I didn't make any money, so I never owed money. I also never took advantage of things like welfare or government assistance and stuff like that because I was just always thinking, okay, I will catch up, I'll figure it out. And then once I started making money, my first year of actually landing a client who paid me like $60,000 for that year, and then another client, we did taxes, but we did it at a very minimal point, and I didn't pay my taxes right away. We always thought, okay, well, there's no jail for debtors or debt collectors or whatever. There's no debt jail. So as long as you're kind of taking the effort to file your taxes and pay a little bit here, I always thought, okay, I'm going to catch up on my tax bill. And what happened is it just kind of piled up year after year. And then the next year we did $500,000 and I owed like $150,000 in taxes. And I was like, okay, we'll catch up on this later. So every year it was me working to catch up on the tax bill that I owed from the year before. And legally, we weren't set up always correctly. We didn't have accountants. We didn't have, the right pieces in play to get our taxes handled. And that really came back and bit me in the ass years later because the IRS did come after me. They took all of my money from my bank account. I owed like $100,000 from 2 or 3 years before. They also went to my back taxes for the years that I didn't pay and didn't think I was making any money. They still charged me for that. And they put a lien on my bank account. Took all of the money from my bank account, even though there was 10 times as much money in there as I owed. They took it all. And then they came back and they paid back what I didn't owe later on. So that was a huge issue. That was a huge, punch in the freaking nuts right there that really hurt progress, my mentality, and just the business growth altogether. I mean, that's where we had to that's when we had to kind of reset, figure out what we're doing, get things properly set up, tax-wise, license-wise, all that good stuff. I see a lot of you guys making the same mistakes, and it's, I understand because we're coming from a workforce to being the leader, being an entrepreneur. Taxes, they don't teach you any of this stuff in college or high school or anything like that, and it can be very overwhelming. Pretty much all these 3 mistakes kind of play into each other, where I paid myself too much, wasn't thinking about the long term, and the taxes. The tax problem was me, again, thinking short term. How do we make it today instead of thinking long term? So things that I'm doing now that have really helped take away all these issues is, 1, we have a set salary for myself. I know my numbers. I know what I need to survive. We pay a little bit more. We have a little bit more expenses and stuff, but that's no problem. We have that as a salary. I'm an employee to my business, and that's what I make. And if I'm going to get a raise, it's going to be for a reason. There are certain things. We have other expenses that are just as important as my salary that go into the business. 2, we think long term. The money that I make, the money my business makes, it doesn't just go back into the short term systems. It doesn't just go back into paying what is needed now. We're investing in different pieces. Even my business, the money that my business makes, we start investing in the real estate. We invest in the stock market. We're thinking long-term plays. And then 3, the taxes. We have a set accountants that are helping us properly. We're paying taxes as we make the money instead of worrying about it later on and always trying to catch up from last year's bill. And it took me a good, one of the biggest issues that kind of got me mentally this year was this whole tax thing, because the past year and a half, 2 years, I've pretty much just been working to catch up on those bills so that we can start thinking about growth again. And that can really get you down where all the extra money you're making is going to shit that you've done for 3 years ago or whatever. So now all the money we make in a year, all the money we make today or tomorrow, that already gets paid out on a quarterly basis for our taxes. And we overpay a little bit. And I have someone at the IRS that we continually speak to and just kind of always make sure things are proper and set up and all that good stuff. So these 3 big mistakes are what kept my business from exploding even faster and even more. And I want you guys to avoid them as much as possible, because I know that a lot of you guys are making the same mistakes long term. I know it doesn't seem almost reasonable right now to think that way, but always have that end goal in mind, and don't just be playing that short game. Get everything set up properly, have an accountant, have your money paid. Think about what your business needs, what your employees need, and then also play that game. So guys, hopefully this helped you out a lot. Hopefully me being transparent about the things that I would most times not want to share with others is going to help you also avoid a lot of the heartaches that I've experienced through business, just through my own bad choices and thinking that short term. So guys, Travis Patel here. Let's grow. Let's make something huge together. Things are back on track. It's kind of, I feel almost like I'm on square one, starting from zero again, just having to get back into this good mental state as well as financial state to be able to really blow things up. And hopefully I can help you guys do the same thing. Once again, guys, Travis Patel here. Have a good one.